The economy has been shaken up because of the coronavirus pandemic and the government shutdowns that forced economies to a standstill across the nation. Also, we're now seeing riots that have swept the country over the last few weeks, though they've tempered down a good bit, thankfully, but a lot of destruction around the country. Stock market has been ebbing and flowing, seemingly getting more positive overall. But what's really going on here? Let's talk about both of those aspects of things, the economy and the stock market, with Vance Ginn, who is chief economist at the Texas Public Policy Foundation, as well as Chris Burns, who's CEO of Dynamic Money and Markets Guru himself. Gentlemen, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
I want to start here before we dive into the conversation by playing Cut 2. This is Larry Kudlow yesterday, chief economic advisor on CNN's State of the Union, talking about some of the current state of play economically.
I personally agree with you. I think people want to go back to work, and I think they welcome the reopening of the economy, and I think they're anxious to get out and about. However, at the margin, incentives do matter. And so we've heard from business after business, industry after industry, and there's already some evidence that this effect is taking place. Now, mind you, let me repeat, we are not going to remove unemployment benefits. That will still continue. And there will be some return to work benefit. It won't be quite as substantial. This is a turning point in the economy. Besides the great jobs numbers, you've had a lot of positive green shoot indicators, Jake, and we don't want to interrupt that. Besides the job figures, you're going to get big retail sales numbers reported next week on Tuesday. Already department and merchandise sales week to week are above year-ago levels. You've got an Apple mobility index that's practically pre-pandemic, showing that people are traveling. You've got new business applications are skyrocketing. And by the way, small businesses are now about 80% reopening. So this is all positive news coming off the pandemic. We are in the recovery stage.
Right. I mean, there's still 40 million Americans unemployed, and we are in a recession.
All right, let's start with the PhD economist on the crew today. Vance Ginn, your thoughts on the economy and what Kudlow had to say there.
The key points here, when you think about, we have bottomed out. The unemployment rate was down to a little over 14%, now a little over 13%. You saw a massive number of people who were laid off in May. Things were starting to look a little bit better. In April, and then things were looking better in May with the latest jobs report. So some of those things I think are good signs for the economy. A lot of that has to do with phasing out a lot of these shutdowns. I'm in Texas right now. The shutdowns really started to phase out May 1st. So there's been more economic activity. More people are getting jobs again, and that's a great sign for the American economy overall. And look, there's still some things, there's still some road bumps along the way that we need to get over, but we're going to get there soon as long as we have pro-growth policies in place.
So in terms of the economic malaise, to what extent do you think it's because of the virus itself, Vance, versus the policies of the economic shutdown that we've seen across the country?
Well, when you look at the numbers that were showing the mobility, or people actually moving around, maybe even open table, going to restaurants, some of that had already slowed down before the shutdowns happened. When you look at early March, a lot of the shutdowns happened mid-March. And so there was going to be a slowdown in economic activity. People stayed home more often, things of that nature. But the shutdown certainly exacerbated the problem, and maybe rightfully so when you think about the policies that were put in place. But I still want to think about what Milton Friedman said: don't judge a policy by its intentions, but by its results. And so what we've seen over time is the slowing down of the economy. More people are unemployed. And we've got to think about how that is influencing people's lives at the same time as the coronavirus did along the way.
Yeah, the thing that's been so striking has been how different states, Vance, have handled this differently. So you've had some that have been more restrictive than others. But no matter how restrictive or less restrictive a state is, it is impacting the national economy. We may be seeing 50 different state policies, but when we look at the overall economy and the economic data, GDP numbers, and what have you, a more locked down state can have a significant impact on the overall economy, as might a less lockdown state.
No, that's right. And I mean, when you look at the latest jobs report, showed 3.1 million new private sector jobs were added. That's phenomenal, right? And even if you dive deeper in there, what you'll notice is a lot of them were about 240,000 of them were dentists, right? And dentistry, some of these sort of procedures that were taking place were shut down entirely. So now they're starting to go back to work, which is a good sign. And I think what you'll see soon when the state and local jobs report comes out by BLS is that you're going to have this kind of dichotomy between the states that are opening up a little bit faster versus those who are still shut down at that point in time. And in particular, I think you'll see the red states versus blue states, where you see more red states opening up faster, getting more job creation, that sort of thing happening. And unfortunately, that's going to lead to more unequal growth and higher, income inequality just between the states. Where do you really want to work, open your business? The places where I know I'm going to get a source of revenue and not be dependent on more government intervention, maybe the PPP or some other sort of program that's out there.
Sure. Chris Burns, CEO of Dynamic Money, what's your sense for the overall economy, especially as someone who sees how the market reacts to the different machinations that we see?
Yeah, the market's really fickle, and we have to remember that because we saw this incredible drop, and we're just getting a feel now for what that meant. I mean, literally, the data just came out that close to a third of the Wall Street Journal reports of folks over the age of 65 moved all of their money out of stocks just in the last few months. That's insane. That the economic impact, it's hard to even fathom. Literally, over, I think, 23% of small businesses, there is no one, the owners aren't working at this point, which means that's like taking 4 great recessions in the last 3 to 4 months. And so you go, the scale is significant. But when it comes to the market, the reason we saw this dramatic drop last Thursday, and we're still seeing volatility now, is that we keep getting new data in. And the market is pricing in this concept of, whether we like it or not, there's a lot of increased cases right now, and not just increased cases because of testing, but increased hospitalizations as well. At least that's what the market's looking at. And you can take that and explain it from any number of reasons. But the point is, if the market thinks that the coronavirus is not under control, and then you add to that the reality that we still have thousands of protesters on the streets every day, President Trump planning a rally for this weekend with, he hopes, hundreds of thousands of attendees, it's as if Americans have said, we are comfortable going back out overall. But the virus is responding to that. And where that will take the market at this point, nobody really knows.
Well, Chris, one encouraging sign is Wall Street Journal has a report on the University of Michigan's index that looks at consumer sentiment, and it is up to 78.9 in the 2 weeks that ended on June 10th. And it's up from 72.3 for the previous report. So that is, what, a 6.6 point rise in consumer sentiment in the beginning of June. Now, that's, of course, a soft indicator. That's just showing what people are thinking. But that's at least an encouraging sign, I think, Chris.
Well, here's the issue in my mind, because I saw the same study. So the problem is that doesn't take into account much of last week, right? And what we saw last week was this gut punch of the market dropping dramatically. I mean, 6, almost 7% in most of the major indexes. And you go, well, why did that happen? Well, a big part of that was anxiety over the numbers. Whether that's justified or not, that's where we sit. And so my fear has been, we're in kind of one of two things will happen here. With all of the protests, like the reason I believe that we see consumer sentiment growing stronger, that we can get out and be about, is because if you're looking out and see thousands of people out every day, you go, well, why can't I go to the restaurant that I want to go to? Why can't I go back to a movie theater, jump on a plane? And if the virus stays in check, that could actually dramatically increase, I believe, how quickly we can recover, right? But the flip side is also true. If we happen to see, and if we're intellectually honest, we have to look at both sides of this, the virus expanding, then that could be what the CDC director, the CDC came out with a few days ago and said, look, if things keep getting worse, we're going to have to see more restrictions again. Now, the administration has said we're not willing to go back to shutting everything down. And I think economically, we can't go back to shutting everything down. That would be disastrous. But it's worrisome that in the last number of days, we've seen what looks like possibly a turn that's not in the direction we're hoping.